Thank you. Okay, as I told you last time, we're getting into a slightly different mode for the last 3 sessions. And it's again one of those areas where I guess traditionally in the definition of entrepreneurship, people have some doubts as to whether it fits or not. As far as I'm concerned, I have no doubt it fits in perfectly. And that's away from the pure startup to the buyout. You know, why start something? Just buy it, make it better. Right? That's as entrepreneurial as starting a company. And by the way, it's a lot easier to finance, so there's a lot of reason to consider it. There are a lot of these other ways of getting started in entrepreneurship, to be honest, and I think I mentioned that before. I don't care how you start. What matters is that you do start. Right? If you want to do it through a franchise model, some of you in their startups are working on franchise models. Franchise is a prepackaged startup. Right? Is there anything wrong with a prepackaged startup? I know it's less sexy. So what? Right? In the end, what matters is that you get successful quickly, or if possible, in your first venture, and you do whatever you want afterward. I don't care, okay? And buyouts belong to that group of relatively easier, less risky way of getting started on your own. So there's definitely nothing to, not pay attention to there. Okay, so that's the positioning. We'll do 3 sessions, 2 that are really buyouts. 1 without the need to bring in an external investor, and 1 with the need. And then we'll do 1 which is what I would refer to as growth capital. It's a bit of both. It's a little bit like a startup. And yet you're actually buying a very early stage companies and you try to grow it. That's why we call it growth capital. It has features of both. And it will look familiar because some of your startup are already at that stage. They exist, they have sales, they have a team, they have a product, but they do feel and taste like they still haven't solved their startup problems. So we'll do that as the last one in the series. So okay, so Kamel, let me tell you the story because that's a funny one, and you can obviously realize that we're going to have a bit of interaction with the parties there later. Started in 2001. I was in the office. I get a phone call, just before lunch when you're about ready to run, and pick up the phone. And he goes like, "Oh, Professor Lulu, how are you doing? This is blah, 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 blah. I would like to have a bit of time with you to discuss some issues." I didn't understand the name. That's why I'm kind of gobbling it. So he comes in and we have lunch. And I still have no idea what he wants. Except I understand after, appetizers basically, that the issue is when he graduated, he decided to take a job with a French company called Rodia. You may remember Rodia. Well, it's still there. He was in the strategy group, essentially responsible for a number of companies. He joined Rodia because he was growing fast. It had very ambitious plans. So it was all exciting. He hadn't done strategy before, so it made sense, right? So he's in there. He's working with Rodia. Everything is going well, except in 2001, somewhere around the time he called me, Rodia hit the wall. And it's one of those typical stories, right? One morning, everybody loves Rodia. The next morning, some analyst woke up and went, these guys are going to hit the wall, right? And then the share price go poof, instantly. And he kind of looked at the situation and he's like, shoot, for my career, this is not going to be good. I mean, what he was really looking for is to next transition into like a general management position. He had done, manufacturing. He had done a couple of different sales, and now he was doing strategy. So it made sense for him to have, a general management position next. And in a company that is going to be restructuring, downsizing, selling assets, forget the opportunities, they're not there. I really can't do anything for you. So I just snapped back at one point. I told him, if you think it's really so good, why don't you buy it yourself? At which point he started looking at me like really troubled. Right? Like he thought I was going berserk. So I said, no, I mean it. I mean, you're describing something that seems to have a lot of the things that would make it possibly a decent buyout target. Why don't you investigate that option? And that's where things started. It was a complete accident. I had no idea what he wanted. We just got it started there. I said, well, I can go back and tell you a little bit more about what you look for. So let's try to work it out ourselves. Van was about your age, Okay, at that point in time, he was 2 years out after his MBA. He was 31, 32. Doesn't have money. He's not a rich family. Right? He's Indian, working for a French company. And he's considering to possibly buy a company since his career options internally are kind of constrained at this point. If you were in his position, what would you be looking for? Characteristic of a company. I'm talking about my dream list, if you want, of characteristic. What should it have? Now we'll use that on Kermel and you tell me whether it fits or not. I say it's a dream list because you'll never find a target that probably has all the characteristics, so we'll have to make trade-offs. But in general, what would you be looking for?
It needs to be prospective and cheap. Okay,
cheap. This is not a dream list. This is a hallucination, as people say.
Competent management.
Okay, and that's an interesting one because it's maybe counterintuitive. It's a competent management team. You want people on board already in the company that run it well. Yeah, but what am I going to do then? Right, as a buyer. I mean, what are my options for improvements? But you're absolutely right. In general, you want a competent management team. What else would you look for, Jerome?
Low level of debt.
Yeah, okay. Low level of debt. Some people would rephrase that and say high debt capacity. In other words, you're able to put a lot of debt on it because somehow the whole idea is about stretching. It's about buying more than you can chew. You're going to need a lot of leverage. So you probably want a company that is presentable to the banks and they'll feel good about it.
High growth potential.
Easy is a trick one. Okay, I'll put it down and I'll see what I do this. High growth potential. Why am I feeling a little uncomfortable with the notion of high growth potential? Because
we don't have money.
Exactly, and that's going to be the constraint throughout. Now, this is an exercise in which you start with little money. You're going to need to leverage a lot. You understand that growth, it's not that I don't like growth. But to me, growth automatically means this is not going to happen. Right? And if it's high growth, it's going to consume a lot of cash. Cash I don't have, and I will not have for a long time. Yeah, we talked about management, but you're right, competent technical team. I mean, people are very key. Huh? You understand that the big issue with the existing management or technical team is simply that if you don't have it, recruiting is going to be very expensive and time consuming, and those are the two things you don't have in a buyout, after a buyout. You don't have money anymore, and you don't have time. Right? So you can't afford to change everything. You can't afford to build a brand. You can't afford to recruit a whole management team. It's not going to work.
No functional substitutes?
No?
Functional substitutes for the product?
What do you mean by that? What example did you have in mind?
Well, if you have a product, for example, and it can be substituted by another product.
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay. No easy substitutes. We can keep on adding. Kermel, where does it fit? We are in late 2001. Cheap, okay. It's actually, is it for sale? No, it's not for sale. Let's be very clear. In 2001, it was not for sale. It's a unit within a large industrial group. Makes it even worse. It's going to be a carve-out buyout. You have to take it out of a big group with separation problems, right? So there's not for sale. Easy, you don't have to worry. There is no time frame. It's not on the market. Management team? Great. Especially Marcus. Marcus Schwinn was the guy who was directing the plan. Great guy. Okay, so yes, I'll give it a 9. Never give him a 10, right? It's level of debt?
Yes.
Huh? Why do you say yes? On what basis? Did you see balance sheets for Kermel? Why didn't you see balance sheets for Kermel? It's part of a group. So actually, you could get a balance sheet. They had a balance sheet, but it was a mess because it was loaded with all kinds of intercompany debt. But if you buy it, you're going to need it clean, huh? Essentially with very little debt. So at this point, again, not for sale. And part of a company, we don't really know. Growth potential, what do we have? Moderate? Historically, I call zero growth very moderate, okay? Very, very moderate. Postponable? Not clear. Self-financing? Probably not, right? But it's very moderate, so that kind of trumps everything else. So it's moderate, it's moderate. Competition? Oh yeah, you got strong competition, right? Come on, you got DuPont. DuPont has 60% of the world market. You got Teijin, you got a bunch of other smaller guys, very fragmented industry. So actually you have competition. Barriers to entry? Yes. Mostly technology. So we had it somewhere with technology. Where is my technology? Yes. Strong IP. Brand? I should pass the products around. Actually, it's a very nice brand. Regional. I mean, it's France, Italy, a little bit of Germany, a bit of UK, but it's a good brand. I mean, they have a majority market share in like France, Italy, and I think that's about it. But they have majority market share in some markets. You buy this, you fix it, you make it bigger. Will you find a buyer to sell it? Probably, right? It's profitable if it's cash flow positive. You can sell it to guys like DuPont. You could sell it to a weaver that takes the fiber and weaves it into something. So I would say it's okay, right? So again, if I had to put a rating, I'll put a 9 on the brand, I'll put a 9 on the technology, I put an 8 on the exit. It should be feasible. So you look at this, and that's really what we did. Huh? We sat down and then we say, okay, fine, let's look at Kermel, and what do we get? Well, nothing to get too excited about, right? It's not bad, but the biggest issue is that it's not for sale, right? That's kind of an issue. So we don't know whether it actually has the kind of balance sheet that would help us finance it. And it's a big business, right? It's doing what, 14 million in sales? 1 point something million in EBIT. How much would that go for? I was suggesting some numbers that were more in the 20s, you know, low 20s. It's an industrial operation. 20 million euro. It's kind of a big pocket money, right, for someone. And so there's also the issue of finding an investor, which you had here, because this is not small. So this was like November 2001. So we looked at it and we said, you know, honestly, if you really like it, keep an eye on it and start to think about it. You know, try to build a little business plan. What would you do with it if you buy it? It's a long shot. It's not for sale, so don't waste your time. I mean, there is no point in doing anything. But just think, you know, start to build up maybe a story.